We've got a couple of folks to thank and a couple of pieces of context to give before we kind of jump into our panel today. So thank you, the folks of First Christian and the International Center, for welcoming us to your community today. We're so excited to hear your stories and to hear what you have to say. We're just thrilled to be here. This is Kentuckians from across the Commonwealth, 22 different counties, and we're all ears and cannot wait to hear what you have to say. We also have lots of folks to thank for organizing these experiences this weekend. Thank you again to our hosts here at First Christian Church, to Pamir, the restaurant that's going to feed us today, to Diane Ford, of course, with the International Center, and our speakers who are joining us today for a community conversation. It's entitled Beyond the Box Checking, Strengthening Refugee Resettlement in Our Community. We also want to thank just briefly our funding partners, so Art of the Rural, National Endowment for the Arts, the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, W.L. Lyons Brown Foundation, the Kentucky Arts Council, Owensboro Health, the Marilyn and William Young Foundation, the Lawrence and Augusta Hager Educational Foundation, and Public Life Foundation of Owensboro. Also want to thank some members of our local host committee, you remember Chad from last night, who are joining us today. And would like to acknowledge any special guests who are joining us. I see some members of the church community that are here to welcome us. And again, Laura Farmer and Eric Farmer. Laura is a RUX alum. And Eric's just a delightful person to be around and here to help us feel welcome as well. So make sure that you guys introduce yourselves and take a moment to speak with our hosts as well. We are really excited, again, I say, to learn about your experiences here in Owensboro and kind of what that experience has meant for you. And as fellow Kentuckians, we can't wait to hear your story. To facilitate this panel is Diane Ford from the International Center. And if you're ready, I'll go ahead and turn this over to you.
Thank you all so much for having us. And thank you for being interested in refugee resettlement and wanting to come and learn about what we do. My staff, they are quite nervous, so we're going to make this as casual as we can. And I really did not want to do this presentation because I wanted you all to hear from them. They are case managers in our office, but they themselves were refugees. So they either came through our office in Owensboro or they came through a different resettlement agency. So they have a really unique perspective of what it means to be a refugee and what it means to help resettle refugees. So I really want to get to the part of this presentation where you get to hear from them because they're the interesting and inspiring people. But they felt like it was important for you to see this presentation that I often give to community partners that explains a little bit about how someone becomes a refugee and what the process is. So if you don't mind to bear with me, I'm going to get through it really quickly. And that way it sets a little bit of the backstory and gives you some context about what it means to be a refugee and what the process is. So I'm going to ask if will you hit the lights? Because I think it's easier to see this presentation if the lights are dimmed. And I'm going to try to not trip over this cord and run the PowerPoint at the same time. So a refugee, by definition, is somebody who has been forced to leave their country to flee their country due to war, persecution, or natural disaster. The International Center and agencies like ours do not have anything to do with determining or designating someone a refugee. That is all done overseas by the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. So we don't have anything to do with that process. But as you see here, these are the 4 categories that someone can be deemed a refugee, whether they are a woman or child or girl at risk. Do they have an urgent medical need? Are they a survivor of violence or torture? So once they flee their country and they arrive at a refugee camp, the UNHCR determines if they're a refugee. According to the UNHCR, and if you're a data person at all and you're interested in refugee resettlement, I encourage you to go to their website. They are wonderful at putting out current data. And right now, in 2022, according to their statistics, there are 3 countries where most of our refugees come from. 52% of all refugees come from Syria, Ukraine, and Afghanistan. And it makes sense when you think about the conflict, the crisis that took place in those countries in 2022. So those three countries make up the majority of where our refugees are coming from. Now in Owensboro, we are resettling from three primary geographic regions: Africa, Afghanistan, and Burma. So those are the three for us. We do not typically get very many Ukrainians, but we have a few that we have resettled in the past year. So from there, when a refugee is deemed to be a refugee or they are working through that process, the UNHCR, as the four people that are on our panel, you'll be able to ask them these questions and they can better explain it to you. The interview process for them is quite arduous. On average, a refugee spends 18 to 20 years in a refugee camp before ever arriving to America. This process involves multiple interviews with multiple agencies. The UN interviews them from a security standpoint. They're interviewed for things like their birth date. Most of them don't know their birth date. Underdeveloped countries don't have birth certificates, so they're trying to find out what their birthdays are. They're trying to find out what their address is. Once they go through that process and it's decided that they're coming to America, then they're vetted by the Department of State and Homeland Security. So they have to be screened from a security standpoint, not just by the UN, but by Homeland Security and the US Department of State. So it's interesting to me that when refugees come here, one of the main barriers that we find is housing. And property owners don't like to rent to refugees because they don't have a state ID. But one thing I always say is, they don't have a state ID, but they've been vetted by Homeland Security. So it's a lot more secure than a state ID. So once they go through that process, then they get cleared from a medical standpoint, and they go through medical screenings. Once they go through all of those screenings from medical and from security, then they're prepared to arrive in the United States. After the travel has been booked, we don't book the travel, the International Office of Migration does that. We assure the case via a secure website called DAISY, and that's through our affiliate in DC. We book the travel. The travel's booked, we assure the case, and they arrive in Evansville, Indiana. That's our pickup point. From there, we do all the essential services for the refugees. We provide them housing, we set up their utilities, we provide them a social security card, a food stamp card, a medical card, we enroll their kids in school, everything you can think of, we provide those services. So the one thing I'd like to highlight is that when those refugees leave that refugee camp, most often they have not left that camp one time. Their first introduction to America is their arrival into Evansville, Indiana. So I want you to watch a couple of little videos that show where they've come from, and when they land in America, this is their first introduction. So this is a news clip from the Congo to give you an idea of where they've come and how they arrive in America, and what they have just come from. Excuse me.
Civilians continue to pay a heavy and bloody price for the conflict
So that's the Congo. There continues to be a lot of civil unrest and political unrest in the Congo. For most of our refugees, when you are deemed a refugee and you come to America, you have an automatic pathway to citizenship. After 12 months, you can apply for a green card. That is not the case for Afghans. Any of you that follow immigration know that we occupied their country for 20 years. When Kabul fell and their government collapsed, the only way to get them out safely and quickly was for the administration to deem them humanitarian parolees. To become a refugee, you heard me say the average length of stay in the camp is 18 to 20 years. Well, we didn't have that time. They had to get out fast. So to get them out, the president deemed them humanitarian parolees. This was a designation created by Congress 20 or 30 years ago. So that's great, except we brought them here with no pathway to stay. So our Afghans are all in the process of applying for their asylum, meaning they're in the court of law arguing for their right to stay in America, not to be sent back. They have to argue to a judge and an adjudicator, explain why it's unsafe for them to go back. So this is a clip. I highly encourage you to watch it if you are interested. I've watched it with several of our Afghans who say that it is as close to accurate as anything that they have ever seen for what they went through. It's called Escape from Kabul. HBO happened to be there filming our military withdrawal from Kabul, not knowing things would collapse and escalate as quickly as it did. So there happens to be this very accurate documentary of what happened. Turn on closed captions. Do you know how to do that? Okay. It's built into my presentation. I'm not exactly sure how to do that. Is it over there? I am not a tech person, but let's see. He does? Okay. Thank you, Richard. I'm the least tech-savvy person you've ever met. Is that good? Thank you, Richard. Was that better? Okay, good. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm so sorry. So each demographic and group of people that we work with has just their own really unique and often devastating stories. And you know, we have the Afghans that had that tragic, awful story of an unprecedented evacuation and just no time to prepare. They did not think, they never thought they were going to have to leave their country. And in a moment's notice, it was either you try to get on the plane or you risk you and your family's lives. And we have a lot of Afghans that didn't get to come with their families, their spouses, their children, their parents, and some that were lucky enough that made it on the plane, and we're so glad that they're here. And then you have the Congolese who were victims of such violence and torture, and you can't even imagine the type of trauma and PTSD that both groups have suffered, but very different. And then you move to the Burmese and the different groups of Burmese and the persecution and the violence that they have suffered. And this particular video is going to be about, that you're going to watch, is about the Rohingya people, that some describe as maybe the most persecuted group of people in our world's history. They're a stateless people, no one accepts them, and what they have been through is horrific. And you'll see the World Bank did this little video this year about the refugee camp there and the dire situation. And I'll say this, some refugee camps are better than others, and they can speak to you about this later if you would like to know more about that. But some of the camps are developed and organized and supportive and have a foundation, and some are horrible and don't have any sort of support system and the very bare minimum. And that's what you're going to hear about here, is the World Bank trying to build up one of the largest refugee camps for the Rohingya people.
President of the World Bank Group, and I'm here in Cox's Bazar at the refugee settlement for the Rohingya in Bangladesh. We spent most of the day here listening to the stories of the courageous Rohingya, and we heard horrific stories of raping, of burning of homes, of the taking of land. I asked one of the men, why is going back to Myanmar under the right conditions so important to you? And he said simply, it's where my grandfather was born, it's where
So I started incorporating little videos into this presentation because I used to stand up and just do data and just kind of the formality and the process of where our funding comes from. And by the way, it is all federally funded and regulated. All refugee resettlement across the country is federally regulated, monitored, and funded. But I think we're a cinematic society, and I think because of our devices, we're always on them, we're kind of used to that. And I think it gives us a perspective of, just a slight perspective of what these people have gone through and how they literally come from that, get on a plane, and arrive here to nothing but excess and abundance, because that is what we have here. And I did not apply for this job. They can tell you. I didn't. It just kind of landed in my lap. I'll tell you the quick story of how I got here. My daughter was in high school AP Human Geography class studying immigration, and the Afghans were coming, and she said, "Mom, we have to do something. All these Afghans are coming, and there are people in our community that don't want them here." People in her class saying bad things, negative things. I said, "All right, what do you want to do?" And she said, "Well, I think we should adopt some." And I said, "Well, I don't think that's allowed, so let me go down to the International Center." I didn't even know where it was, and I feel awful about saying that. And I introduced myself and said, "What do you need?" And I'm slightly involved in the community, so it turned out that some of the things they needed, I could connect them with. One thing led to another. And one morning, my husband woke me up and said, "Hey, you're listed as the housing coordinator in the paper, and your cell phone number's in the paper." And I was like, "Okay, all right, well, good." And the staff at the International Center was very small. We had just come from an administration that wasn't as pro-refugee resettlement, so there had been cuts made, and so the staff was small, and funding was small for refugee resettlement. And all of a sudden, you had 167 Afghans that arrived in just a couple of months in Owensboro. And Owensboro was not accustomed to that. So I ended up being the point person in the hotel. They all ended up in Comfort Suites Hotel, and I basically lived there for 4 months and organized meals and medical appointments and formula and diapers and medicine and snacks and everything you can think of, and fell in love with those people. One thing led to another. They asked me to serve on the board. I did, and then they asked me, "Would you step in as interim director?" And here I still am. But I love all of them, every client that walks in our door, and I love my staff. Oh my word, and they inspire me every day to keep going. And I think I work 7 days a week most weeks, and I do it because I don't know why it's not me that was born in Afghanistan or Myanmar or Africa. And there's no explanation why I was born here with the luck that I have to be who I am. And I just hope and pray that if I was born over there, there was somebody like me doing what I'm doing here. And I hope my children see that in me, that to me, this is what life's all about. So anyways, they're the people you want to hear from. But I titled this Discussion Beyond the Box Checking. My staff hears me say this a lot, that we do have to check boxes, a lot of them, because it's the federal government, so we check a lot of boxes. But I think Owensboro can go beyond box checking for our clients, because I think they deserve it. Humanitarianism should not be subjective based on the color of your skin, your country of origin, the language you speak, or the religion you believe in. It doesn't matter. We're people. We're human beings. We need to treat each other with kindness, and we need to help those who need help. And so I think Owensboro can do better, and we can go beyond the box checking. So in our office, that's what we talk about, and how do we do that? We've kind of just started this, looking at our mission and how do we get there? Well, we connect, we collaborate, we are trying to create new partnerships, like the ones we've started, this church, First Christian, they do bi-weekly grocery delivery. Every 2 weeks, I get a text message from Janet Leckett who says, Diane, who needs groceries? And they deliver groceries to anybody that needs them, any of our clients. And if there aren't any in critical need, they just deliver. They have our list of addresses, and they go and connect with our refugees. They make them feel connected. And I tell you, that is so important. Long-term successful integration, that's what we're looking for. We want our refugees woven into the fabric of our community. We don't want them to just get a minimum wage job and stay there for 20 years. We want them to be a part of Owensboro, deeply rooted and connected here, so that they can advance in their careers and have a high quality of life. And this is how we get there. First Presbyterian Church, Diane Bowers, they do our house setups for us. They get to know the clients. They set up their houses so that when we take them from the airport, it feels like home. And that makes them connected to our refugees. We have a washer-dryer program. We try to give every refugee family a washer and dryer if their rental house doesn't come with one. We collaborated with OCTC to build an ESL to welding program to get them a trade certificate, those that could do it. And our first cohort just graduated, and that was a really big deal. We have a biannual health fair with U of L Nursing. Donald, our employment coordinator, started a soccer team. Our Congolese love soccer. They play Saturday, Sunday, and now they play on Mondays. They love it so much. We bought them cleats. We're working on jerseys. We're getting them a sponsor. We have family mentors. This church started an Afghan women's group. They meet once a month. They come in here. They put on makeup. They get out sewing machines. They sew. They're going to do art next month. And now we're going to expand that and do Burmese and Congolese. And let the women have a space for them. So we're just getting started with our Beyond the Box checking mission, but it's very important. And when you take this back to your communities, if you have refugees in your communities, I hope you look at what you can do to go beyond the box checking. So that's enough about, and you've heard enough from me. Let me let you hear from the truly inspirational people, and let me welcome up Edris and Skye and Joseph and Hortence, who are 4 of my favorite people. Okay, I told them we're just gonna have a conversation. And so, first, I'd like for you all to introduce yourselves a little bit, and they have your bios that you sent me, so they know a little bit about you already.
Hi, my name is Skye. First of all, I just want to say thank you for being interested in wanting to know more about us. My name is Skye. I work with the International Center for about 4 years. I am a refugee from Burma, but I was born in Thailand. I came here when I was 10 years old. My family and I, we first resettled in St. Louis, Missouri, and we moved several places, and we end up here in Owensboro, and we loved it very much. We loved the community, and my fiance and I, we just bought a house, so we're gonna be staying here for a long time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hortence Kalambayi. I was born in Democratic Republic of Congo, and due to war, we were forced to migrate to Zambia, the neighboring country. We lived there for almost our entire life, and we got to travel in 2021. I traveled alone, and then I insisted on bringing my family here, and thankfully they made it here. And I work at the International Center for about 2 months now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Edris. I'm from Afghanistan. I was a journalist in Afghanistan. I work for the Kabul Times daily for more than 14 years. So I came to US September, so we left the country when our country collapsed on August 2021. So we came here after a long journey and spending 2-3 months on the camps, and then here in Owensboro spending like for 2 months in hotels, and we finally got our home, and then I'm now working as a Afghan community liaison for the International Center of Owensboro. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Musambia Mutengelwa. Those are my names. And I'm originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa. I can say that I left my country when I was 14 years old to Tanzania. Then I left Tanzania in 2006 to Kenya. So I came from Kenya to America. So I've been here for almost 5 years now. And I work for the International Center for 2 years just to help our community. I'm very thankful to see everyone.
Thank you all for sharing that. So one thing I would like to talk about is, we'll start on a positive note. What do you all think Owensboro does well in welcoming refugees? In the resettlement process, what does our community get right? What do we do well?
I think that we have a great church support system and school support system. For me, I don't want to speak just for myself. I've interviewed few people. Burma have a lot of ethnicity. One of the ethnicity is Karenni, which that's what I am. So I've interviewed few people from a different ethnicity from Burma and asked them about their experiences, and they all said that, churches were very welcoming. Like Owensboro, or this church provided garden space that gives them a sense of community. They were very lonely, especially not knowing the language, cannot read, cannot write. And so I think that in the school system, we're very welcoming as well. I had a Burmese person told me that they recently moved here and they didn't have anything such as, mattress. They're moving here from another state, so the school system provided mattress, clothing, and so they have a really good resource center.
I also think that the International Center and Owensboro community does well in mentorship and volunteers. I came here alone, and you can just imagine the loneliness and not being surrounded by family like every other refugee, sharing the love and the happiness of being here with anyone, because I'm also antisocial. So having volunteers knock at my door and make me feel welcome, and showing me around, taking me places like downtown, just telling me about how happy they are, that they're so happy to see me, felt valuable, and I loved that about them. I love the volunteers and the mentors.
Yeah, let me start before Edris. Yeah, for me, I will say that Owensboro host community is very, very supportive compared to the rest of the state that I've seen, because once I came from Africa, I was in Rockford, Illinois. I didn't come directly to Owensboro. So what I see here is totally different with the rest of the state, because we have volunteers here that help our clients, taking them to rest, taking and helping them with so many things that I've never seen to the rest of the state, as I said. And also, the mentorship program that the International Center implemented is very, very helpful, because, as Hortence said, we have a few number of staff, but a big number of refugees that we cannot manage. But our mentors and volunteers used to visit our refugees, our client, most of the time to give them hope and talk to them and take them to the different services. So from that, for me, I said the host community, Owensboro community, is very, very supportive. Yeah, that's my perspective.
So I want to add one thing on the volunteers. So the time that we spent in the hotel for almost 2-3 months, so we saw a lot of support from the community, from the volunteers that they were coming to the hotel at that time and providing food and providing things for these kids, from diapers to wipes to everything, providing to them, and coming and teaching them English and classes doing, and also taking them to teaching them how to drive and take them to the grocery shops and spending time with them in hotel, because we were there over like 200 people we were in that hotel, so it was like the hotel was captured all by the Afghans that moment, so the volunteers were all the time there and helping them and whenever they need, and with the help of Diane, so lots of companies came to the hotel in that time and talk about the job opportunities in Owensboro, and so we are happy and we got a lot of support from the Owensboro community, and we are grateful for them. Thank you.
Yeah, so you're talking about the job fair. So our Chamber of Commerce hosted a job fair for the Afghans that were in the hotel, and they weren't even ready to work yet. And you all probably remember that. I think a lot of them didn't have socials, but we contacted the chamber, and they were just so eager to work. That's one thing that we should point out, is that refugees, they're so driven, and they really are a driving force for our economy. And we've partnered with Berry Global, if you know the plastics company, largest in the world. They reached out to us and said, we want to partner with you, and we want to hire 100 of your refugees. And they transport them from Evansville. Their North American headquarters is in Evansville, Indiana. They said they have the highest retention rate of any employee that they've ever hired. They did this in Kansas. So they transport them for free. They pick them up at our office. So they just have to get to our office, start them at $18 an hour, starting pay, full benefits, healthcare facility, clinic on site, and the most important thing is they asked me to come in and do refugee inclusivity training to all of their 1,000 employees, from the bottom to the top. Whereas normal employers come in and say, how are you going to train and teach your refugee to fit into my company? They said, we want you to come in and teach all of us what it means to be a refugee. So I go in and do presentations like this so that they understand how to work alongside them. Because refugees are driven. They're here to work. They're here to build a life. So we do things like job fairs because they get here and they really make our communities better. And it's important to note that. It's one of the takeaways that I'm sorry I didn't say earlier. But so we talk about all these things that our community does well, and I appreciate you sharing those things. But we also know, and I've been told, that RUX likes to hear about the things, though, that we don't do so well. And I know we fall short. And so I asked them to kind of think about that and be honest with you all about the ways in which Owensboro can improve. And I told you all that I didn't know where the International Center was, and I'm embarrassed to say that. So we had a large influx of Burmese refugees that came in years ago, and I know I didn't do anything to help them. So I've said this to them before, that I know we have work to do, and I know that we can do better. So I wanted them to be honest with you about that. So that being said, how can we do better?
One more thing that I forgot to mention about the time that we were in hotel. So they let us to start cooking our own food in this church. So that was also a great thing that the church did for us, for the community, for the Afghans, because most of people was not familiar with the food here. So that moment, so thank you for that too.
That is true. We cooked every dinner at the hotel was cooked in this church. That is how we provided their dinner. We brought the food. Thank you for saying that. I forget all the things we did. That was a blur. But we transported the guys over here. They cooked the food in this kitchen. 6 nights a week. We did take 1 night off. And then took the food back for all 200 people because there was no kitchen in that hotel. And that's kind of how the restaurant, Palmyra, that you'll be enjoying today, that's how it got started. The 3 guys that started that restaurant, that's where that conversation started. We began a conversation about, you all should really open a restaurant. And then they did. So yes, that's where that started. So we know all the things that we do well as a community, but let's talk about the things that we need to improve upon and the things that the areas we fall short.
For me, I think transportation system should improve because our clients, and not just for adults, but for also students as well, because there's refugee students that would love to participate in sports, in after school activities, and they couldn't because they don't have the transportation. For adults, the bus system is not very efficient because for them to go to one medical appointment, they will have to clear out 4 hours of their time just to go to one medical appointment. And so it just takes a lot of their time. If they work night shift, there's no bus system for night shift. Sometimes the weekend, on Sundays, they're closed. And so we wish that bus system could improve.
So another thing is the lack of international market. So like most of my community people and the Congolese, so there is no market for the foods that they want, so unaffordable foods, so they cannot have them. So I think that's also another thing that we have. If we have an international market for all communities that live in Owensboro, because most of them, for the meat, when they meet, my community, when they need meat, so they are going to Bowling Green, all the way to Bowling Green to get meat, halal meat. So that's another thing.
So we've talked about both of these things multiple times. I don't know in your communities. So the transportation issue, we'll start there first. The transportation, our transit system does not run past 7 p.m. So anybody that works beyond 7 o'clock, which a lot of our refugees work second and third shift, it doesn't align with those shifts. They are working those shifts sometimes because that's what's available or because it gets more pay. So they come here without the option to purchase a vehicle, no driver's license, so we try to put them on the bus route, but then the bus route doesn't work for them. So the transportation issue is really quite a barrier for them. Plus the children who are trying to do after-school activities. Really, and we're mandated by the federal government to teach them the public transit system, which is quite challenging, to say the least, through a language barrier. So I was really glad that they brought that up as something that was a challenge. And then the international market, the ability for them to find culturally appropriate food that they can eat that's, accessible but also affordable is really challenging. And as we're resettling 200 refugees in this community a year, it's time for our community to start thinking about having options for them and places for them to get their food. That's just something that I think Owensboro, we can go beyond the box checking. We can figure out how to get an international market that allows for them to have access to affordable food that's culturally appropriate for them. Is there anything else that you all can think of that you would like to talk about that Owensboro can do better?
Yeah. One of the things that we go through, we went through, still going through, language barrier. I know that we do not have the right or the right amount of interpreters for every language, but I also think that it's very important to provide audio interpretation for example, in driving, when taking the driving test, my parents thought that they could take the driving test in their native language. So when they just proposed and said, can I take the driving test in French? They went ahead and took the driving test in French, and it was directly interpreted from English to French, and it didn't make no sense. So I just thought of that and realized maybe if it was audio, maybe it would have made sense. I don't know. I think we should improve on that.
It's a really good point. Our driving testing options are quite limited. You know, for Congolese, we don't have it in Swahili written here, or do we now? It is now. Afghans in Dari and Pashto was not in the beginning, and it took a lot of work with the, I think the state chamber actually ended up getting that done for everybody. It was in some communities, but not in others. But that audio version would really help, because sometimes it's just really hard, and a lot of them come here and they're illiterate in their own language. And they're learning English before they're learning to read English before they're learning to read in their own language, because it's more of a necessity, actually, and more helpful to them. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, there's another issue of dentists. I don't think that we have enough number of dentists in Owensboro. So sometimes we are required to go all the way to Indiana if we have a dentist issue. So I think that's another issue that the US community need to improve.
The lack of dentists that will take a Medicaid card, and I know that's a concern across the state. And not just dentists, but specialists in general. And then we've been running into the problem of just providers that require an in-person interpreter, even though they accept Medicaid, which is required. If you're a provider that accepts Medicaid, you're actually, by law, supposed to provide interpretation services. But that's not always the case. So lately, I've had to get on the phone and say, because unless I pursue legal action, there's nothing I can do. So I have to just be really persuasive and say, well, how about if I provide you this interpreter over the phone? Because we're really busy and picking up clients in Evansville and doing all these other things. So how about if he just over the phone interprets for you? Not very kind, but sometimes we get the job done that way. But it's interesting how hesitant sometimes people are when you say refugee, non-English speaking. So
Another thing I do want to add is I wish that Owensboro have a larger house or like more bedrooms for larger families. When we receive large families, a lot of time it is really hard to find appropriate housing for them. And so we end up having to split families, put them in 2 different houses. And so especially like coming to America and all you know is your family, now you have to split and you have to live separate from each other. It's a really challenging and barrier for them. And so that's my wish, yeah.
Affordable housing for large families. A lot of our families come in with 8 or 9 people in the family, and we're supposed to provide them a rental house in Owensboro that doesn't exist, and property owners don't want you to put 8 people in a 3-bedroom, even though there's not a law on that. They don't like it. So we've had to put together a legal document with someone from Kentucky Legal Aid helped us put together a legal document to say, you may not prefer it, but it's actually okay. And so we need more rental properties, but we have really moved the needle, and we have come a long way in the last year or 2, but we're still working to do better. So it's just a daily struggle, but something we're determined to continue to get right. So another question I would like to ask you all is, as you think about your journey to this point, where do you see your future? do you have dreams and goals, and do you feel like Owensboro can support you in that journey ahead in achieving those dreams and goals?
Sorry, I have one more thing that I want to add to the previous point. Jobs. Yeah, jobs, language barrier, because I know that there's so many employers in Owensboro, but they don't all accept our people because of their language barrier. So there are some entry-level jobs that doesn't require even language. Some jobs that you can give to someone and do it better. So I think the employers they need to also be aware of the people that we are receiving. They don't speak English, but they can do something. They can work like any other people, like any other employers. Yes, that's the point I wanted to add.
Jobs, yeah, that's right.
And adding to that, that's a really good point, because, you know, I also wish that the community is more like well informed, and we ask and wish they are more patient with a refugee, because there are several people that told me, you know, whether they're in, DCBS, or hospitals or schools, people, because of their language barrier, they're not very patient with them, and so they felt like they are not being wanted. They felt like they're excluded from everything, and so they felt bad about not being able to speak English, and so being more well-informed community.
Right, yeah, and that to me falls on me. You know, that falls on me to continue, and on us to continue to get the message out about who our refugees are. And if we want a better informed community, then we have to inform them. But on the flip side of that, the community has to be ready to receive that message, right? So I'm looking over here at Chad, and we have we sit on a board together, and you have to deliver your message correctly. But you also have to be, as a citizen, ready to receive that message and ready to listen to that message. And there's a lot to be said for somebody who goes into a conversation with the intent to listen and understand. And that's a whole nother topic that I could get into. It's my former life. But we have to do a better job of informing our community. But our community has to do a better job of listening and understanding. And not everybody's going to want to work with refugees, and we're not asking for that. But we are asking for patience and understanding. If we're going to be a community that has a resettlement agency, then we have to do things better. Otherwise, we shouldn't be doing it, because these people deserve it. They are human beings. And as I said before, humanitarianism should not be subjective. So we either do it right or we don't do it at all. That's the way I look at it. And that's the message I'm continuing to spread. So anything else on what we should do better?
Just on the language thing, well, the thing is, if someone doesn't speak English, they're not necessarily illiterate. So they don't speak English, but they speak several other languages. So they deserve the respect that you give to someone who is an English-speaking person. So respect them equally. They just want to feel accepted. They don't ask for much.
That's a very good point. She's saying just because they don't speak English doesn't mean that they're illiterate or unintelligent. When my family first met the Afghans at the hotel, my husband, who owns a very successful business, and he's a finance guy, and he walked away and said, "Those guys are smarter than I am. They speak multiple languages, they have college degrees, they made it through something that he is determined he could not have made it through." And I said, "I absolutely agree. That's why I'm here. My family and friends thought I was crazy. But you get to know these people up here, and I think you would feel the same way." So just because someone doesn't speak English doesn't mean they're not as smart as you, and my guess is they're probably smarter than you and I. They all are smarter than me. I tell you that. I feel that way every day I show up to work. So, okay, so I do want them to hear a little bit about what your goals and dreams and plans for the future are, and if you think Owensboro can support you in those plans.
I've always wanted to be a lawyer. It's one of my, I call it unrealistic goals, but I want to be an advocate for, myself or a lot of people that are international, and I love to learn more about American law and the system, and so for my unrealistic goal, I think that is maybe towards my passion. Or I also want to be a therapist on the other side. So, and Owensboro is really good about, I think that they will support me if I do continue, because when I was studying my undergrad, there's, my professors they have different resources and programs of, if you do want to, if you do decide to continue with this goal, these are the resources that we have for you, and they're very patient with me, and so I think that, I want to fully take advantage of my opportunity, because when I was in the camp, I always wondered what the other side of the world looks like. And so in camp, there is absolutely no opportunity whatsoever. So I'm here. I just want to take advantage of what is offered to me and what I have in front of me. So
I also have dreams, unrealistic, but I believe I can actually achieve them, because I think I'm young. That's why, yeah. So I'm still in college doing my associate's degree. I'll be graduating in May. And Owensboro is really supporting me in this, because they made it possible for me to go to school and still work at the same time, because I'm new here. I still need to have the money to afford the things that are essential for me and my family. And I still have hopes and dreams of going further and further in education, because why not?
So I also have a dream and goal to do my master, because I have bachelor degree in computer science and I want to further continue and to do my master. And the second goal, so we already think about it, to open a restaurant, so that we have that now. So for that, so just we are working to get it to successful that business. So then once we get successful in that business, so then we can reach to our goal. So right now we are working and hard to do that business a successful business, and that's all.
Yeah. For me, let me make you laugh a little bit. Actually, my main dream was to become a president. That was, it was, yeah, but, yeah.
He has never told me that.
Yeah, I've never told that. So that was my main dream. I wanted to become a president, but for now, I don't see, because I can see like the school is after me. So, just hoping to actually open some businesses to help support the health of the host community. That is only my dream. I don't have any other dream, because I don't think I'll be able to go to school again because of the large family that I have. I have now six children, so that's a lot. So I have to do everything for them. So I don't think I'll be able to go to school again. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be hard, Joseph, but maybe, Mr. President, maybe. That's right. When they're older, you can go back.
So my head now is carrying a lot of things.
They all have such interesting pieces to their story that I wish I could sit up here and share with you about. Joseph's parents just came a few months ago, and when we got the assurance, he didn't know. We don't know who's coming. and it'll just pop up on our website. And when we looked and saw the U.S. tie was Joseph, and he had not seen his parents in almost 20 years. So we were crying, and those moments are so special. And they all have these stories, and I won't go into them because I'll start crying, but if you have any time to talk to them after, it would be worth your time. But I wanted to leave a few minutes for questions if anybody had any. I know the food is out. I don't want it to get cold. It's delicious, as it always is. But are there any questions that you would like to ask anybody? Yes, and I don't know if I can get this mic to you. Do you? Okay. You can probably yell. Yeah, probably.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. My question is, has there been any way for the refugee population to help advocate at the city level, the city council level, for increased funding for transit options, or for building a third space in the community, or building a third space in the community for, more gathering spaces, community-led spaces? I know the church is doing an amazing job, but, is there any way that the city can also help with some of these goals?
Do you want me to take that one? You want me to take that one? Okay. So, yeah, I will restate. So he's asking if there has been any sort of advocacy toward the city, and we have a city-county government. I don't know if you all know that. It's, okay, you probably heard that. Okay, so city-county government. So we do not receive any city-county funding at all. We're all federally funded. We're very lucky as a nonprofit, though, that we are fully funded, dependent upon the administration, let's put it that way. But for the most part, we are. No city-county support for that kind of thing right now. I have a wonderful relationship with both the city-county government. As far as the public transit, I had a former employee about a year ago that did push for a forum to try to improve the city public transit system. It did move the needle a little bit. They rerouted some things and changed it a bit, not nearly enough. Let's put it that way. This has been on the horizon for a long time. A discussion's been going on for about a decade. Correct. So we recognize it as a problem, but yeah, it's been a long time coming. I mean, the manufacturing companies have been working on this for about 10 to 15 years. This is not a new conversation, new to us. I'm quite familiar with how public policy and politics work because of my other life, and change is slow. Let's just put it that way. So, but the second part of your question about the space, we are actually getting ready to move into a new space, our office, which will be able to host, we'll have a classroom space where we'll be able to do employment, training, hygiene and cultural orientations. We're going to be able to do our women's sewing groups and youth mentor and peer tutoring. And so we actually move in next Friday. We're slated to move in. We are the lucky first tenants in a new nonprofit incubator. We had a generous entrepreneur who donated a large 70,000 square foot building to another foundation that I happen to be a board member of. And we decided to turn that into a nonprofit incubator and rent the space out to any nonprofit at 50% below market price to allow nonprofits to come in and not have to spend all their money on overhead. And so we're the first tenants in that building. We're also going to have an event space. It's a really cool property. It's been in the news a little bit, but we get to move in next Friday, if all goes well with the renovations. So it's going to allow us to do some really cool things and for our refugee clients to be able to come in and use that space in a way that they've never been able to before. So it's only getting better. So thank you for asking that question. I saw you first, and then we'll go around, but yeah. So it is definitely, he's asking about the mental health of our clients, and because of all the trauma, and is it culturally appropriate and accepted in our clients? It is definitely an issue, one that we have struggled with, but recently we have formed a very wonderful collaboration with True North, and they have accepted any of our clients. And we've just formed that partnership, so now we can make referrals to them. They have 2 assigned therapists who are excited, not just willing, but excited to work with our clients. So that is our mental health partner. I would say they all need it, actually. They probably all need mental health services, but we identify the ones that are at have the highest risk, and then we make that referral, and then our case managers are set to work with their therapist to give them the back history, and they're set up to use our interpretation services because that was a little bit of an issue in the beginning. They didn't have the correct interpreters through Medicaid, so they're using our Paragon service, which has worked out much better. So we're really excited about the direction that that's headed. We also have a reading circle that's going on right now. It is for a mental health reading circle. They're reading a book, and this is being initiated by a U of L nursing professor who's pursuing her doctorate. And she's implemented this, and it's written by a Vietnamese woman and about her story immigrating to America. And it's all about, it's promoting self-care and mental health too, and so we're hoping to be able to continue that, and we're getting some great feedback there. So we're doing some really cool things that we've just started this year, and we're very excited. So thank you for asking that question. Anything? I saw a couple of hands. I don't know. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Okay. I know, and I'm really sorry. Okay. Yeah. So I'll give you quickly. So the art that you see back here, twofold. Most of that art comes. We do our youth mentor coordinator. She is an arts major, and so she does a Transcend art camp, and so most of that comes from our youth, from middle school up to 24. And they do a lot of art therapy for self-care and mental health. Also some artwork from one of our Burmese. We do try to incorporate art and music. We have scholarships available with the Bluegrass Museum so that we just had a little jam session at our art camp. We are trying to incorporate that as well because we realize the benefits of music and art for all of our clients. Yes, we try to incorporate that too. So, sorry, I know we ran over. No, I'm so sorry. Thank you all so much. And if you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you so much to Diane, to Skye, Hortence, Edris, and Joseph. Thank you so much. I would like to invite, if I could, Edris, could you kind of talk to us a little bit about what we're going to eat today?
Can you talk about the food?
Not to put you on the spot.
Okay, so today we have kabuli, the rice with raisin and carrots and the beef. And also we have eggplant that we call bonjon. So it's with spices and tomato sauce. And we have gulpi, the cauliflower. And then we have the chicken korma, so chicken with sauce and tomato sauce, and we have salad and bread, and yeah, we have also chala without meat, so rice with carrot and raisin. That people that don't like meat, so they can also have chala, and we have dessert as baklava, so with pistachio, almond, and one thing was, that's it.
Can I address the allergies though? Okay. I'll help him address we tried to go through the allergies and dietary restrictions. So I'll tell you what we did. There was a person that was the no tomato and onion, had an onion and tomato. Most of their vegetables are cooked in tomato sauce, so you want to avoid the vegetables, the eggplant and the